Distinguished guests, please welcome a nationally respected leader and advocate for Hispanic business growth and economic opportunity, President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and President of the USHCC Educational Fund, Mr. Ramiro A. Cavazos.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to our Legislative Summit. We're getting a little bit of a late start due to me, so I apologize. But welcome to the Weston City Center. We are excited about this year's legislative discussions, our advocacy. I know we started yesterday with a session at Brookings on economic data, talking about the resilience of our small business community. And I want to welcome each of you. I want to, in particular, thank our staff for putting this together. And we're excited about this afternoon's sessions. We also are excited about our special reception this evening here at 5:30. And then I know we're going to have Hill Day meetings tomorrow with senators, congresspeople, their staffs, each of them a decision maker. So with that, buenas tardes on behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thanks to each of you for joining us. We have over 300 people registered. Some folks are coming from other meetings, and so we are beginning this afternoon as we gather here celebrating our 250th anniversary as a nation. I want to say that this milestone invites us all, while we look forward, we need to take stock in looking backward, and we do it with purpose, and we lead our organization with values. We believe in capitalism. We're free market people, and we also believe that this democracy is the strongest economic theory that is still playing out and has given us the strongest economy in the world after 250 years. This American story is led by the Latino community who arrived in this nation before it was a nation, this country, actually this continent, 128 years before the British arrived at Plymouth Rock. It's a story where the Hispanic community has been transatlantic, and with strong ties between the U.S. and the rest of the world. We're also very well connected this year as we celebrate also 250 years of America, but 250 years of diplomatic power work with the Spanish Kingdom and, of course, the United States. The story of the Hispanic business community, as you all know, is unfolding before our very eyes. More than 5 million Hispanic-owned businesses, $4.1 trillion gross domestic product, the 5th largest economy in the world. Y'all have heard that data. 1 out of every 5 Americans are self-identifying as Latino. And the U.S. economy is strong. The chamber is resilient and strong. And we are meeting the moment with strength and purpose, led by our values, tied to being a nonpartisan organization seeking advocacy and ideas to continue forward. I want to recognize the leaders who have made us get to today. In particular, I want to thank our chairwoman, Jackie Puente. She's the Vice President for External Relations for Comcast. And let's give her a round of applause. Jackie, thank you. I want to thank her for her vision and her purpose, and of course, her unwavering support for many, many years for the organization. So, Jackie, thank you for keeping us grounded and also ambitious in moving our goals forward. I want to thank our event sponsors and corporate partners. We cannot do this without your investment. Your support allows us to convene not just this summit, but our Energy Summit a month ago. The beauty of this year is we are exceeding attendance from last year. I know Energy Summit was the best one we'd ever had. And this year's Legislative Summit has over 300 registrants, as I said. So we're building that pipeline leading up to Fort Worth, September 12th and 14th for our 48th annual national conference. But we cannot do this without our corporate co-chair, Amazon, our corporate platinum members and investors, Comcast, Bank of America. DoorDash is our corporate gold member, along with Edison Electric, Google, T-Mobile, JP Morgan Chase, and our corporate silver members, Moore, Exelon, and Wells Fargo. Let's give all of them a round of applause. To our speakers and panelists who are joining us today and tomorrow, we want to thank you for lending us your time and expertise. I thanked our USHCC team earlier I also want to thank our board of directors. Many of them are in the audience. Let's give them a round of applause. They also support Jackie's leadership. So we've grown into a national network. I believe the most powerful job that we have to do is to work with our chambers from around the country, all 260 plus, our 5 million Latino-owned businesses, and our corporate investors, and to be united, to work together. We can be more powerful, as you know. We cover every region. We have all faiths and religions and economic backgrounds, all different industries, from high-tech to, of course, low-tech jobs. We are the fuel of this economy that is leading the way. So opportunity is in front of us. Tenemos nosotros los ojos bien abiertos, juntos, trabajando para mejorar el futuro. We don't see gaps. We see opportunity with our representation to lead economic expansion. Closing the growth that we're seeing is not happening. We're growing at 18% every year in spite of external challenges. And so we believe in our competitiveness. And of course, I mentioned our resilience, and that's going to continue no matter what. I think it's because we're used to it. And I know that it's because you believe in each other. And I know it's because we're united and we are supporting one another and mentoring each other. We are debuting today our policy platform for 2026. It's online, so that's a roadmap for you to position your chamber, your business, and your corporation on what our strategic priorities are. Our platform was shaped by our chambers, our board, our corporate members, and of course our senior executive corporate advisory boards and our procurement board. So we are, again, working hard to stand clearly to support America's economy and its growth. After all, we've helped build it, and we are a big part of its future. Our average age is 28. We are building wealth, and we're having the skills and the educational background. As you all know, I think I'm preaching to the choir here. You all know how strong our economy is. Immigration and workforce continues to show that we have 14 vacant jobs in America. We need to fill those jobs with a pathway to citizenship. As you all know, immigrants, 80% of them are more likely to start a business than non-immigrants. And you all know that Fortune 500 companies, many of them represented here, 43% of those were started through an immigrant or a son or a daughter of an immigrant. So this is a country where many of us came from somewhere else to build this dream of free enterprise. We also know that our platform calls for common sense, and it calls for economic first approaches to everything that we're doing. With that said, international trade continues to be strong. We're renegotiating our USMCA, as you know. Mexico is our largest trading partner. Trade between us is close to $1 trillion, 900 billion plus. And of course, as you all know, the USMCA review will connect Canada, Mexico, and ourselves. And we need to remove any obstacle that is in the way of growing our cross-border trade. We're dealing with friends, and we're dealing with neighbors and family when we're dealing with all three countries that have made this the strongest trade agreement in the world. We also want to thank each of you for your time today and your ideas. We're going to ask for questions at the end of each of our sessions. We're focusing on capital. We're focusing on artificial intelligence, international trade, and of course, we're going to have a panel shortly that yours truly will be a part of, led and moderated by Jackie, that's going to talk about how minority national groups doing trade and economic development are leading the way and showing us what to do. To our friends in Congress, at the Senate, and of course the legislature through the federal offices, we want them to stop fighting and to work together and to find solutions to the economic challenges that we have. We've just come from a meeting with leaders of the administration and federal agencies, and we all share a common goal. And that goal sometimes is overlooked, but let's just say we need to communicate better, we need to listen to each other, and of course support small businesses. 80% of the jobs in America are led and created by our small businesses, and we know those are the businesses that keep you longer in your position during tough times. And of course, during great times, there is scaling and expansion that's needed, and we want to provide more capital for those. To our corporate partners, thank you all for hanging with us, for your support and your strength. I know we're learning from each other about better business procurement and, of course, supplier diversity, and then building a workforce that is led by Hispanics to make sure that you all know that it is not ESG or DEI. It's just smart economic business to invest in the largest consumer in America, Hispanics, to the fastest growing and talented workforce in Latinos, and of course the buyers of products, and then the vendors that will be doing business with these Fortune 500 companies. So we're ready for the moment. The state of our chamber is about you, and it's led by you when it comes to policy and believing in one another. When you have 260 Latino chambers and growing, each of those marketplaces is where the economy is growing, and it's showing DC where we need to engage more fully. So I'm honored to work for each of you, and it's a privilege to work for this board of directors. So we look forward to today's sessions. We look forward to the advocacy tomorrow on the Hill with Democrats and Republicans and independents. We know this is a pivotal year where we're going to be questioning the direction of this country, whether it's good or bad for the economy, or it's something that we can improve upon. So I'm committed to each of you. I know Jackie and our board of directors are committed to concrete action and ideas before you all go back to your home states, to your cities. Before you leave Washington, meet someone new, go see someone that you've never met before. And of course, I know our legislative team, Dina Guillen, and a lot of friends that are here, Larry Gonzalez, I see, and of course, many work with Anthony and Santiago and our government affairs team led by Anita Grace on our board of directors to find and see how we can engage better on your behalf. Lastly, we belong in every room in this country. All of us were raised to have self-confidence and pride in our decision-making. When we show up, though, we need to back everything with data and solutions and a vision, and not with our emotion. But we need to lead knowing that, as a former president said at the beginning of this nation, facts are stubborn things. So data will drive our policy, and it is irrefutable. So I'm very excited about the work each of you is doing, your belief in us and one another, and your faith. And you do it, many of you, in both languages. El que domina dos idiomas tiene dos espíritus. So we get to tackle problems by being creative and using everything at our disposal. So we're building businesses, creating jobs, making investments, believing in the future, and strengthening our democracy at the same time. Democracy without capitalism is not strong, and democracy without, of course, our democracy is also not strong. But together, they are powerful components, capitalism and democracy. That's what we believe in. Muchísimas gracias. Welcome to our Legislative Summit. We look forward to the rest of today and tomorrow. Thank you all for coming to the nation's capital. This is the most powerful city in the world, and let's not forget that. On behalf of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, our team and board of directors, I'm very privileged and honored to welcome you today, and we look forward to the sessions and seeing and hearing your questions. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Cavazos. Business leaders and partners, this afternoon's session is made possible through the support of organizations committed to advancing economic opportunity, innovation, and entrepreneurship across the nation. For brief sponsor remarks, please welcome Small Business Policy, U.S. and Latin America with Amazon, Ms. Jessica Reeves.
Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están todos? Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And it's an absolute honor to be here today representing Amazon at the USHCC Legislative Conference. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to Ramiro Cavazos and his whole team. I'm proud to say that I've had the pleasure of knowing him since his time leading the San Antonio Chamber. As a fellow Texan, Latina, and entrepreneur, I am so grateful for the tireless advocacy that he and his whole team, the chair, Jackie Puente, do day in and day out, which was something that was on full display today at the White House briefing for those of you who were there. It's a privilege to continue to collaborate with you all to champion our nation's small business owners. When I look out this room, I am excited to see so many colleagues and friends from different chapters of my career. My passion for small business isn't just my current job description, it's a through line in my career. Today I'm proud to have a job where I get to uplift the stories of our small businesses selling on the Amazon marketplace and connect the dots for folks about how when small businesses succeed, Amazon succeeds. By the way, how many of you are Amazon shoppers, customers? Make sure to check the Shop Small icon when you're putting things in your cart. You too can continue to support small on Amazon. At Amazon, we view small business not just as sellers in our marketplace, but as our primary partners. In fact, more than 60% of sales in Amazon stores come from independent sellers, most of which are small and medium-sized businesses. We focus on critical challenges for modern entrepreneurs. Amazon democratizes retail and provides the digital infrastructure that allows entrepreneurs to get off the ground, test their product, and find an audience without the overhead of traditional retail. We also are helping business scale and grow by providing built-in global audiences. Through tools like Fulfillment by Amazon, a small business can manage their international selling right from the comfort of their home. This allows US sellers to seamlessly ship across not only the country, but across the globe. This audience knows that when Latino-owned businesses thrive, the entire economy moves forward. At Amazon, we're fully committed to ensuring you have the tools, the digital infrastructure, and the policy landscape to scale without limits. If you want to see the broader data about how we are partnering with entrepreneurs, please check out our latest Small Business Empowerment Report, which lays out the incredible trajectory of our independent selling community. But beyond the data, this partnership is personal. Please count on me to support the entrepreneurs and the business leaders in this room. You all are the backbone of our economy and the small business ecosystem. Let's talk about how we can continue to help Latino-owned businesses launch, grow, and scale. Thank you so much, and enjoy your summit.
Thank you to our partners from Amazon. Distinguished guests, to introduce our first panel discussion on federal legislation and its impact on America's small business community, please welcome Chief Growth and Partnerships Officer for the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Cynthia Jaramillo.
Good afternoon, everyone. This week's agenda reminds us that our work is not theoretical. It is about real chambers, real businesses, real families in communities across this country. It's about the real work. We began the summit by focusing on the power of Latino entrepreneurs who drive America's economic growth. And we are carrying that energy into today's general session, from access to capital, to AI and innovation, to our growing role in the hemispheric trade. The message is clear. Hispanic-owned businesses are central to the economic future of this country. This next conversation brings together leaders who each represent a vital part of that story. The United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the United States Black Chambers, and the National Veteran-Owned Business Association are partners in a shared mission to make sure that opportunity is not limited by zip code, background, or account, but is expanded by the diversity of our business community. As chamber leaders, we know that policy debates in this city eventually show up as bottom line realities at home, whether our members can get a loan, win a contract, or hire that next employee. That is why our collaboration matters now more than ever. Together, we can move from isolated wins to sustained structural change that lifts all diverse enterprises. It is now my privilege to introduce this National Chamber CEO panel as they discuss how we can align our advocacy, deepen our partnerships, and build an inclusive economy that truly works for everyone. Please join me in a warm round of applause as we welcome our moderator and outstanding chairwoman, Ms. Jackie Puente. President and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, Mr. Ron Busby Sr. He has a junior. They're both fantastic, by the way. Help me welcome the CEO of the National Veteran-Owned Business Association, Matthew Pevelek. President and CEO of the National Asian Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Chiling Tong. And please help me welcome back our President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Ramiro Cavazos.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And I know people are coming in, so we'll try to get started on time here. And first, thank you everyone so much for being here. Ramiro, you're here. You had no choice. But everyone else, thank you so much for being here. We're so fortunate to be joined by many of our member chambers from across the country and so many of the businesses that are members of those chambers, members of our national organization, and really the folks coming to DC to do the work, to talk to our legislators, to talk to appointed officials, administration officials about what is happening in our communities and how can we go back and be the agents of change, the agents of economic development that we know chambers do so well. So Matt, you're my newest friend on this panel, and I love that. I love making new friends. Tell me a little bit about what's happening at Navoba.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay.
They're on.
Yes. All right.
They're ready to go.
Thank you. And thank you, Ramiro, and thank you to everybody for the invitation to be here. We're very honored. And I know that from my time in the Army, there's a lot of my brothers and sisters that are Hispanic, and vets are everybody. And so I know that there's a lot of business members that have also served that are part of your community. And so for those of you that have served, thank you for that. We're very grateful. And so, well, one of the things that we just did last week here in Potomac, we graduated our third cohort for our procurement readiness program. So our nation invests a lot in veteran-owned businesses to help them be successful, but almost all of it goes to help them compete for government contracts. And very little, if anything, goes to tell them that they can compete in the private sector to win corporate contracts. And so we worked with our friends at the National Veterans Institute for Procurement, and we did this training program. We connected them with 25 large corporations in a matchmaker event. But that's the first time in our nation's history that we had any type of investment in training vets about how to compete in the private sector. And so that's been going really well. And so we're very grateful to Wells Fargo as one of our lead sponsors for that program. I see that they're also supporting this event here too, so thank you for that. And it's been really great. So we're grateful for that opportunity as well.
And it's a great time for that pivot. We've seen so much change in the federal government federal procurement over the past 2 years especially. I mean, I think there's been longer term trends, but the ability to be nimble and to move to where businesses need the support, where businesses can, have greater opportunity is so important. Ron, tell us a little bit about things that you're doing at the U.S. Black Chamber, modernizing your chamber, maybe some exciting announcements you want to make for this group of recent accomplishments.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to my brother Ramiro as well for having me here. This is not unique. Our organizations work well together and have been since I've been around since 2009. Right now, people are really concerned about what the government is doing for minority contractors. And we know many of the challenges that we're facing. And so the U.S. Black Chamber is taking this chance in American history to say, this is the best time in American history for you to be a business owner. We've all heard a lot about the grain tsunami. These are individuals like myself, 65 and older, that had a business, that was operating the business, and are now saying, what am I going to do with this business? I don't have a child that wants to take it over. I don't have a younger business partner. I'd love to be able to sell my business, but I don't really have someone that is in succession planning. We partner with an organization called the National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters. I tell this story because in 1988, there were 23 Black-owned radio stations in America. There was policy that was created under a Republican administration that said if a majority radio station owner sold to a minority radio station owner, then the majority radio station owner did not have to pay capital gains taxes. We went from 23 radio stations to 336 radio stations in a matter of 10 years. There is policy that can be created that will, out of the box, move minority businesses when policy is created with minority businesses taken into consideration. And what the U.S. Black Chamber is doing is saying, how do we take advantage of this opportunity? There's $15 trillion of wealth that will be able to be transferred in the next 3.5 years. And it's not coming back. And so if we're not taking advantage of this opportunity today, we are once again going to lose it. And so one of the things that the U.S. Black Chamber is doing is making sure that our businesses are not just starting businesses, because we can't grow those businesses fast enough to take advantage of the contract opportunities that exist today. We're saying for the same amount of effort that it takes to start a business, you can acquire a business. The U.S. Black Chamber is making sure that our businesses have the resources, the funding, the technical assistance, the legal advice to make sure that we're successful in that. And so that's one of the main things that we're doing, along with acquiring our own new campus, our own new headquarters here in Washington, D.C., 7.88 acres of land, used to house the former Black Entertainment Television, BET campus.
It's where they filmed the Michael Jackson music video.
There you go.
Scream, for those in the audience who are interested.
And we understand that the model that nonprofits once managed under of going to corporate America asking for philanthropic donations, asking our members to make sure that they support us, is that much more challenging in today's environment. But our organizations have to do our work. And so when the federal government is cutting back on the resources that they provide, it is up to us to fill in the gap. And one of the ways that we can do that is to create business models that give us sustainability so that we no longer have to worry about who's in the administration or if we're popular that year or not. We are about business and making sure that our businesses have what they need to have sustainability.
So we've heard about pivoting to opportunities in the private sector, getting folks prepared for the opportunity to acquire businesses. All of these, I think, are themes of how we modernize chambers and get prepared for the next generation of business owners. Chilling, first of all, congratulations on a great API Heritage Month. I know you've been traveling across the country, doing so many things internationally, talking to so many folks. Tell us some of the great things that are happening at National ACE with your members.
Thank you. Jackie, before I say that, I really, really want to praise you and the Romero's leadership, and also all the great work USHCC has been putting together. You know, every time if there's some important issue, our first question, what's USHCC's position? What's Ron Busby's position? And we're always able to collaborate with each other. I think that's very, very unique in Washington, D.C. Doesn't matter, is Republican, Democrat, for us, green is more important because we want to help small business to get more money, access to capital, contracting opportunities. So we represent 3 million AAPI small business owners. We have employed about 5 million people. We have 130 affiliate chambers and partners throughout the country. So last week, we celebrate AAPI Heritage Month, Small Business Month, and also American 250th anniversary. Very much like USHCC, we are very nonpartisan. So we had a White House briefing. We have a congressional visit, about 30 members. And everybody, we are just focused on small business. How to help small business get more funding, especially like a SBA microloan, you know, $50,000. For our national ACE, we have done a survey. You know, about 50%, 40 to 50% of AAPI small business owner, they will not be able to afford $5,000, you know, urging money. so urgent funds. So we feel SBA still have a lot of work to do. And another thing is contracting opportunities. Although Ron has mentioned the budget has been cut, but we are still talking with administration. We talk with DOT. Your own person, Alan Gutierrez, right now is the Osterbo director, and we work with them to able to get a matchmaking serious event throughout the country, and the next one will be Raleigh, North Carolina. And again, SBA have their manufacturing grant. So I understand the challenges, but as long as we work together, we'll be able to create more opportunities for small business owners.
Absolutely chilling. And I think that's exactly right. And I think, for people that come to DC, we're all in this area, we're visiting with different elected, appointed officials all the time to talk about these key issues. I think there can be this misconception, right, that we are talking to one side of the aisle or picking and choosing where we want to weigh in. I think one of the important things that this group has done together is to make sure that our message about the importance of chambers is known to everyone all the time, everywhere they are, right? Ramiro, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities we've had navigating that at the USHCC?
Happy to, Jackie. I want to thank my colleagues and brothers and sister on the panel. I came to DC close to 8 years ago, although I was familiar with DC. But speaking of challenges, Jackie, I was new in this market, and you were an ally since we first met in Philadelphia. And you said I would be your best friend, and you would be my best friend, and you have done all of that. And I just want to say serious gratitude to you and everyone here. I know Chiling and Ron, especially at the beginning, they were like, whatever you need, you let us know. And so it's really about overcoming the challenges. You do that through partnerships, through working together. You mentioned it earlier. I stated also previously when I was doing our welcome remarks that we're stronger together, and those are words to some people, but everyone here on this panel believes that. And right now, we need each other more than ever. And the reason I've seen it work is our chambers who are with us at one time were not members of our board of directors, just to be very specific. And our small businesses, were not as loyal or organized. And our corporations were not as plentiful as we have now. But over the last 7 and 8 years, by working together, focusing on nonpartisan issues that matter, that focus on growing the economy, and truly believing in the whole country working together. It sounds trite, but I know that the strength of the attendance here annually and at our national conferences is a very diverse group. And even our own Latino community is diverse. As you know, I love to tell folks that we're Afro-Latino, we're Asian Latino. We have, in my family, we have many veterans. All of my uncles and some cousins were in the military, including my father. And it was a rite of passage. It was the greatest generation, as it's been referred. I think our generations are pretty good, too. We're going to be great in different ways. Part of that is just, technology. Part of it is AI. Part of it is creating wealth and prosperity in a community like ours that's looking forward to the future. So in conclusion, Jackie, I would say that the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is relevant and matters today because who we keep company with. And these are the folks on this panel that we believe in each other and we support one another. And we know we need to set the example of working as a partner. And I believe in partnerships, as you know.
I think coming out of the experience, we were in New Mexico not long ago for our energy summit. And we have a program with Blue Wave there to help certify or to credit they're not certified, but they're credited with tools and training to compete for different contracts. And what's wonderful is when we're there, we have Black Chamber from San Diego present. We have API Chamber from Minnesota all participating in these. And the way we can share resources to do more together is not just about the policy work here in DC, but we take that with us on the road when we are talking about the energy sector or telecommunications or agriculture, all very important areas for our companies to grow. Looking ahead, so here we're going to get to some nerdy DC talk. What are some of the emerging policy issues that you think our business leaders should be focused on or paying closer attention to over the next 5 years? Chilling, I'm going to start with you.
Yes,
Kind of
absolutely.
keep suspense up.
Yes,
Yeah.
we always have our policy agenda, the beginning of the year. Of course, right now, the number one thing is AI. You know, everybody is measuring how AI can help small business and how small business can use AI. There's a survey about 80% of the small business, they are kind of adopting AI in some way. But how can we make more sophisticated? And also workforce development, digital assets. Thank you for Comcast. Always put this as the priority. And tax, energy, as you mentioned that. The increased cost of energy, how the small business are going to deal with that. So this are all the important issue we have been discussing with the White House and also with the congressional leaders.
We don't want to take too much steam out of the AI panel later today. Ron, what do you think is another topic that we need to have business leaders focused on at the table to discuss?
A seat at the table, honestly. When our voices
Say more.
Yeah, when our voices were invited to the table, our message was heard, and we were able to participate in policy conversations.
Are you talking about the attacks on chambers of commerce in certain states?
Exactly. The attack on diversity and equity and inclusion, because I don't say the attack on DE&I. I say the words. The attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion is a huge conversation that many people are having privately, but not really having publicly because of the potential backlash. I say it's not an attack on DE&I, it's an attack on you and I. It is our communities, it is our businesses, it is our policies that had been created to give us a chance to be able to compete that are now under attack. And so for me, I'm going to continue to say that the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion is unnecessary. I really feel like it's unlawful, but more importantly, it's taking America back as opposed to moving us forward.
I mean, I feel in some way there's like a cognitive dissonance here, right? Because most of the companies, represented here know that chambers are incredible partners, right? To identify, the businesses that are, prepared for the contracts, that are networked in, that have the workforce, that have the intel, see around the corners, right? And chambers and communities are often seen as, the economic drivers of activity where people come together to not just, exchange contracts and refer business, but also think about what does our community need? Where do we need to invest our money? What are the programs that we want to see in our schools and our universities and our community colleges? So how are we, showing, in our actions and in our outputs that chambers of commerce, regardless of what the acronym is on them, that they are the true drivers of economic growth? I mean, we see this in jobs numbers and jobs reports every single month. But Ramiro, do you want to touch on this a little bit?
I'd like to. I agree with Ron.
He's an economic development nerd. The other one on this
I'm
panel.
an economic development nerd. I have seen, I've been around a few more years than the average American, and I have seen an investment in a small business that was a woman-owned or a minority-owned business through a resource. Could be $100 in capital, or it could be their first contract at the city of Charlotte, or a tax abatement for someone expanding using a small loan from a CDFI, for example. They're all alone. It's their vision. But I've seen already where that little bit of help by someone that knows that the metrics will work and has belief in someone's vision and idea can make them a multimillionaire. I've seen that happen with a woman-owned firm, a black-owned firm, Asian firm, veteran-owned business. Ron is correct, though, right now. And the reality is this, and I've heard this before, and we only stand for the best, each of us in this room, whether we're minority or women-owned. We set a higher standard for ourselves. And yet the attack on these programs that were designed that we didn't name is an attack on your fellow Americans who you want and should do business with. But my point is this, Jackie, is that because we hold ourselves to a higher standard, the false narrative out there is that these efforts in the past have been about lowering standards. It's about breaking down obstacles. It's about putting us at the tables with everyone else, Fortune 500 firms, publicly traded companies. It does make a difference because that's where decisions are being made. And I want to challenge everyone that's here is that it's not about me and my idea or my belief in expressing what I believe towards you. It's that we need to listen to one another and we need to be more united. We're a race. We're not we're an ethnic group. We're not a race. We're a culture as Latino Americans, and everyone on this dais is a part of our community, and that's what I love about our culture, Jackie. But unity, it's about bringing people together. A lot of folks out there trying to divide us, and we have more in common than people think we do. And I think it's going to make us stronger. When it's all said and done, when this story will be told, it's going to show that we had two roads to take, and that we took the one less traveled. And sometimes we ourselves can make the difference.
Matt, thinking about different organizations right now, right, that have been able to accelerate and build partnership across public-private lines. Talk about what your organization is doing, because in many ways, your chamber has had a different experience, and that is one way that we can be stronger with partnership, working together and sharing those resources.
Yeah, it's not lost on me that veterans are not in the crosshairs of anything right now, but that always wasn't the case. And so, for anybody that was around during the Vietnam generation, thank you for that. But Ron brought up a really interesting point too, and I think this ties back into the policy discussion. I'll use the silver tsunami term, he used the graying tsunami. But this is another opportunity, the falling tsunami, the thinning tsunami. But this idea of this massive, McKinsey released a report in February, it's called The Great Ownership Transfer, and it's talking about that massive wealth that's going to be lost.
6 million small businesses will be on the market as their owners retire, with $5 trillion in enterprise value at the table.
Yeah, so she's already on top of it, right? So this is, it's a real opportunity here, and you see the resources that we have to help people start small businesses. We have the Small Business Administration, and then there's very little that's done to teach people how to acquire a business or entrepreneurship through acquisition. And so not only do you lose the employees, you lose the value, so much of what happens, because out of those businesses, 92% end in closure, right? So only 5% are transitioned to family members or to employees, whereas 3% might be sold off to private equity. So there's this huge opportunity for us to be able to, as a country, to be able to invest in policies that allow the acquisition of businesses, and something as simple as waiving the capital gains tax. But there's also real value to our corporate allies because they're working with these businesses in their supply chain. Continuity of your supply chain and having a company that you like, know, and trust and can rely on that helps impact shareholder value in a popular or positive way, that's a very valuable thing. And so if we can keep businesses that are successful in business, I think that's something that's going to be a very significant policy for our entire country.
So I know we have to wrap up quickly. What is the one message you would have for our chambers and the audience as they go back? Is it the sharing of resources? Is it the continuing to tell the stories? Is it the continuing to attract new members to build up that ladder to the national organizations? What would you have be one kind of soundbite as they take to the Hill tomorrow and then return to their communities after this week is done? Ron, start with you.
I think for us, it is about making sure that our message is intentional, that it is transparent, and that there's accountability. we've got to stop believing that people on Capitol Hill don't want to hear from us. They never wanted to hear from us. It's just about making sure that
Never
they
stopped us in the past.
never stopped us.
Matt?
Business case. Always focus on the value that you can provide and why it's sound and good policy to work with your company.
Chilling?
Well, as Ron has mentioned, if you are not sit at the table, you will be on the menu. And I think this is so important for our community be united together. Because I serving as a congressional commission to study the potential creation of APA Museum. That the project will bring our community together. Hispanic Museum, National Museum, that's a project can bring our community together. USHCC is the organization that can bring our community together. So be united.
Ramiro? And
Jackie,
if you don't mention the FIFA World Cup on NBC and Telemundo, it will be discussed later on.
Spurs can bring everybody together. The San Antonio Spurs can bring everybody together. No. Jackie, and the Olympics also in 2028 in LA. Wanted to say, do not be afraid to ask for help. There are more people out there that would be proud to support you and to help you fulfill your dream. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And I think our chambers who are here know that they can be the resource for those businesses.
And we are just at time, so I say one great way to bring chambers together is watching parties for the FIFA World Cup on Telemundo, because we all know that watching soccer is better in Spanish. This was a great panel, so much energy. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Jackie.
And on to another.
Colleagues and friends, to introduce our next discussion examining financial services policy and its impact on entrepreneurs, financial institutions, and access to capital, please welcome President and CEO of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and USHCC board member, Mr. Luis Rodriguez.
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están todos? You know, some of the world's best leaders are in this room today. If you look at what the trajectory is happening, we've seen the data, and I know some people feel there's uncertain times, but I assure you 20 years ago compared to today, we have not had the advancement that our Latinos community has been having over the past 20 years, and it's directly due to many of you in this room. Give yourselves a big round of applause for what you've done and the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It's truly a privilege to be with you at this legislative summit as we gather in the nation's capital to turn advocacy into action for our small business community, for our Latina business owners. We have just heard from the national chamber leaders about the power of cross-community collaboration, and now we turn to one of the most critical ingredients for business success: access to capital. Across our markets, we hear the same story again and again and again from our Hispanic business entrepreneurs. We have the ideas, we have the customers, we have the work ethic, we have the ganas, but we need fair, flexible capital to grow. That is why today's financial service panel is so important. It is where policy meets practice, where the commitments we hear in Washington must translate into products, partnerships, and pipelines that actually reach our business on Main Street. Today, we are joined by leaders who sit at the intersection of finance, community development, and public policy. They understand that investing in Latino-owned businesses is not a charity. It is a smart economic strategy for the United States of America. When our firms can access credit, build assets, and scale, we create jobs, we expand the tax base, and we thrive innovation in every sector. It is now my distinct honor to introduce our moderator, Principal at Hilltop Public Solutions, Gabriela Cristobal. And our panelists, starting with President and CEO of Locus, Pravina Raghavan. Senior Vice President and Federal Government Relations Lead at Bank of America, Matthew Gomez. And Managing Director and Head Community Engagement at JP Morgan Chase, Courtney Hodap. they're yours.
Gracias, Luis. And thank you all for being here today. As Luis mentioned, entrepreneurship is such an important part of our cultures and our identity, and access to capital is a critical component. Backstage, our panelists had a chance to start talking. They have so much insight. I don't want to take up any more time than possible. So I'm going to start it off with our first question and have everyone introduce themselves as they answer. So starting off generally, what are the most significant financial services policy issues currently being debated in Congress, and how could they impact small businesses? Pravina, do you want to start?
Sure. So hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name again is Pravina. I'm the president and CEO of Locus. Just a quick on what Locus is, because you probably haven't heard of it. You've heard of the other two next to me, I know. But we are a community development bank and also a community development financial institution, which means we go into communities, local, place-based, and help them grow facilities. Think about childcare, think about affordable housing, and really support communities based on not just creating jobs, but creating futures and economic opportunity. We're celebrating our 20th year, so you're all welcome to our big event later on this year in November. Ask Jackie, she's in the back, she'll give you the invite for it, but we're happy to invite you. But one of the things we've been talking about with the current environment we're all in, and I loved when he said, you need fairness and flexibility. What does that mean? And so there are a lot of regulations being up for debate that have opened up, like the Community Reinvestment Act, which is one of my favorites because it supports CDFIs across the country. But then you've got, I love the Dodd-Frank. This is when the geeks in the room will be like, 1077, like the business reporting. What does that mean? Transparency. And then Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. No one knows if it's there or not, and those types of regulations to help create transparency and make it easy for entrepreneurs to understand, what does it mean when you get a line of credit? What does it mean when you put a second mortgage on your home, or you're doing that, and being fair and transparent about it is what we're all debating. And how do we continue supporting that regardless of what's happening in the world and in the national economy? How do we continue to reinvest into our businesses? And one of the things I will say is I spent the last 15 years in state and federal government, is a discussion we continually have is, how do you make it fair and flexible where you're not looking at things that may give you a different impression? And you want to sit there and say, it's not about credit score, but can they pay back? How do we sit there and look through that? And I think some of these debates continue to happen, but there's a lot of good support to ensure that they're fair so that we can continue doing what we do best. So I'm going to let these two speak. They already, their banks, so they can skip that part.
Matt, do you want to go next?
In your seat.
Wow. So thank you again for having me over. Matt Gomez, Senior Vice President, Federal Government Relations at Bank of America. I cover consumer and small business policy. Right now, the two main policy areas within the world of financial services we're keeping a very close eye on is the regulation of digital assets and the push to make housing more affordable. Those are the two, with a limited time left this Congress, those are the two areas that are broadly considered as must-pass. Currently, with respect to digital assets, the Senate Banking Committee last week approved a bill that would provide a market structure for digital assets. And there are several components of that are, as the bill moved from the committee stage to the Senate floor, a few outstanding issues. The two Democrats who voted in support of that bill did so conditionally. They conditioned their support on ensuring that various other provisions of the bill, particularly with respect to anti-money laundering requirements, ethics requirements, and other issues would be resolved before the bill gets to the Senate floor. On the House side, funny enough, there's a bipartisan housing bill that has gone back and forth between the chambers. I actually had lunch yesterday with a member of the House Financial Services Committee, and the view from his perspective is that there are perhaps a couple of items that are a bit extraneous on either the far left or the far right. And there's a hope, at least on the House side by some, that the bill will be, not to say streamlined, but that it will get narrowed a little bit more to have it focus more squarely on pure housing issues. I know that in the tax world, there is also a recent push to provide some sort of tax regime for digital assets as well. If the banking committee and those regulators are going to start to provide more of a structure for digital assets, then shouldn't there be some regime on the taxation thereof? So those are a few of the things we're watching, and there's a few others as well, but those are the two main ones, I think.
Thank you so much. I'm Courtney Hodap. I lead community engagement at JP Morgan. I'm privileged with my team to steward 1,000 or more relationships with stakeholders, among them USHCC. So I'm really pleased to be here today and appreciate the opportunity. I agree with everything my fellow panelists have said. Maybe just to put a finer point on some of the small business aspects as we round out this particular question, the Afford Act in Congress is an opportunity to increase the opportunity for investment in community development financial institutions, CDFIs, and the Main Street Act of 2025 is an opportunity to increase investment in small business investment companies. So those are two very tangible ways that we could increase the amount of flexible capital for small businesses.
Now, I know innovation in crypto and digital assets are quickly advancing. It's something that everyone in this room, I am sure, is following regularly. But in what ways does that pose a threat to the Community Reinvestment Act? How should Congress and regulators approach oversight of digital assets, fintech platforms, and emerging payment technologies to ensure we don't lose the impact of programs designed to expand economic opportunity?
Yeah, thank you. So the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, is part of what I would consider, and we all consider, the bank regulatory perimeter. That's a wonky way of saying these are the sets of rules that obligations that banks must comply with. Anti-money laundering is a main one that has been in debate in the digital asset space. And the Community Reinvestment Act has not been as hotly debated in this ecosystem. But yet it's true that if deposits leave the regulated banking space and instead there are greater holdings in crypto and stable coins and things like that, if there is not a corresponding requirement by those companies to also make loans where they take deposits, then it would represent a weakening in effect of the Community Reinvestment Act. This is it's a very important piece of the regulatory perimeter that, again, as a very complex piece of legislation moves through both chambers, is one that we are going to keep a very close eye on. And I suspect that as the bill advances to the Senate floor, there will be greater considerations placed on how the bill can preserve the impact of the CRA, because you're right, over the last several decades, it has been a linchpin piece of financial regulation that has proved to be a massive net positive for the communities we serve. And so that is one piece of a much broader policy ecosystem that folks and advocates ought to be keeping a very close eye on.
I would just underscore welcome clarity in the digital asset space that we certainly would like to see, but could not say enough how important the Community Reinvestment Act is to the communities that we're serving. It is a requirement by banks, whether you are state chartered or federally regulated, that you reinvest in the communities where you have bank branches. And that is how we are able to do so much of the community development, small business, and consumer work that is critical to powering economies. And we certainly don't want to see that change in a way that would negatively impact our communities.
Agreed. What lessons have financial institutions learned from recent economic volatility and banking sector disruptions?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things we learned is that resilience is massively important. We also learned that information travels through this economy in 2026 incredibly fast, and that from our institution's standpoint, we were called upon to be a source of strength at a key moment. And I think it's a testament to the regulatory framework that was put in place after the crisis of 2008 that had an emphasis on strong capital requirements, had a strong component of risk management, and it had a strong component of stress testing as well. And when those components of the bank regulatory regime were tested in 2023, we learned that the system works, that the banks are very well capitalized, and that, again, we were able to be a source of strength for the economy. I know you all have a good story to tell here as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was a moment of strength. JP Morgan was able to acquire the assets of First Republic Bank. That had impact at a national level in stabilizing the system. We were also able to integrate millions of customers into our operations, and in particular, two communities that First Republic was especially prominent in, San Francisco Bay Area and the Boston area. We have maintained our commitments and our work in those communities. It's in fact only really grown since that time. And so it turned out to be a moment where we could demonstrate how we could as a system come together and continue to invest in the communities that we serve.
I'm just going to add, I mean, that's a great story, and I think that just kind of double downs on the point that capital is important, but the liquidity of that capital and to get it back into these communities is very tough. If the anchor isn't gone, who's coming back to help support it? And so to be able to support it and make sure that there's still that liquidity going on, and that's what we talk about now. There are a lot of very well capitally, sure banks and community development institutions, but how liquid can they get to be going in when there's this economic crisis that you can't even get a $250,000 loan for something? And so having more of that liquidity available and working across the spectrum from large to small is really important. And I think that's what the stability shows. When you look through the economic crisis, the reason things keep going is because we're able to talk to each other and go, how do we get more liquid in this? How do we go and use other sources of capital to make sure that that loan gets done? Because it's not the capital constraints sometimes, it's how liquid can the bank be.
Thank you. And that creativity is so important for communities, especially small businesses. Shifting gears a little bit, there is research that demonstrates how small businesses rely on credit cards for that access to capital. As someone who grew up around small businesses and in restaurants, I know how critical that is when a stove or a delivery truck goes out. So what legislative or regulatory actions are needed to improve that critical financial services? Pravina, I'm wondering if you can start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about a lot of the resources that are used to help support small business lending through like the SBA, this Community Development Financial Institute. They're under attack in a way. They can't get the money out. And so when you look at that, it then goes back to the private sector. How do we all get together and try to figure out to be that replacement capital? And I say this as a former CDFI fund director, it is very difficult to replicate that model. But how do you introduce things like credit enhancements so that banks and other financial institutions can take that risk that they would have relied on a government guarantee for? Because that's what's happening now is a lot of places are kind of cinching back because they're like, well, I can't put everything at risk. I don't have my umbrella that I've used to. What do I do? And we're talking like small loans, right? I mean, the SBA last year said they had 38,000 loans under 150K. 150K sounds like a lot of money when you're first starting out, but when you got to buy a new, refrigerator system and rehab your building, that money adds up. But you can't find places that are going to give you loans that are less than 150 because you're looking at a large liquidity risk. And also, what are community banks looking at other than just your credit score and that, and looking at how well do you repay your rent? Do you pay your sales taxes? And looking at alternative credit models. We're lucky enough to be able to do that because of the way our box works, but how do we also get backing for that to create more liquidity so that we can do more with it? But I would say from a regulatory perspective, CRA is really important in that, but also what are we doing with the other federal funding? How do we turn back that spigot to allow some of that really small dollar loan back into the market?
I would also add how important it is to have a thriving credit market. That's so critical as you think about the need that small businesses have for access to revolving credit. So often we think about the need for credit as a term loan, and we find, and certainly this bears out in National Bureau of Economic Research, that so many small businesses, as many as 65 to 70%, are relying exclusively on revolving credit on their credit cards, and that is a really flexible source of funding for them. It's a key piece in the continuum. We think about at the firm. You come in as a small business. We're working with you as a consumer customer, perhaps. You've got your side hustle, and then you're building that into more access. We eventually want to get you onto the investment banking side, of course, but it's those early credit cards that are so important and such a critical piece of the ecosystem.
Pravina, you've mentioned this, but what federal actions are most needed to support community banks, CDFIs, and mission-driven lenders that are really serving those underserved markets?
One thing is technical assistance. I always say this, you could be the best baker, but that does not mean you know how to run your business. And I mean that with all due respect to everyone, because that's a lot of time we spend on, we run a small business development center, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're getting $0 this year for SBDC. We at the bank were like, all right, we got to go and make sure we still have bilingual counselors and looking through that, because we want someone to live out their dream. But if you've never had to balance a checkbook or don't know how to use, or you don't know how to use your credit card correctly, someone's got to teach you that. And so how do we find more ways to do that? And I think what people don't realize with all the federal cuts is a lot of those programs that were meant to go into these communities, and you think about it, kids don't learn about financial literacy, and if they're lucky, maybe when they're a senior, but if you don't understand that and you're like in your 30s going, I really want to start a business, you may be the brilliant at what you're doing, but how do we make sure that you also have that financial understanding to be able to say, okay, if I take this credit card, how do I push it off so I can get a loan and build my credit? But those are not things we teach, and that's what I think is lacking. And then I would say the other thing is a lot of these programs that were meant to benefit the community are just right now very vulnerable. So how are we bringing philanthropic dollars to help us support that? Because it can't just be the financial institutions. It has to also be a partnership with some of the philanthropic money to say, okay, put a deposit at our bank and we'll be able to go and buy down someone's interest rate, and things like that, being more innovative in how they look at the sector, because we need to we have to solve this problem together with one avenue being closed.
Can I just add, we have found that our partnerships with CDFIs are so much more powerful when we are working together on both the investment and the loan side and the philanthropic side. There's so much to be said for long-term relationships and partnerships where you're thinking about both sides of that coin and really supporting the capacity of the CDFI.
Okay, this next question is what I know everybody was waiting for. With the recent Basel III proposal from the Federal Reserve to reduce capital requirements, I see some smiles, I know what people came for, most notably the global systemically import banks, how do you see newly freed up bank capital impacting the broader financial services industry, particularly for underserved communities?
I'm excited to take the Basel question. I think it's important to contextualize the current proposal with some of the history. The Basel Committee is composed of many central bank regulators from across the world, and they got together initially after the financial crisis of 2008 to hopefully synchronize bank capital across the planet. We are now in 2026, and they're still working on it. The important context here is that as recently as 2023, the Basel Committee proposed a set of bank capital requirements that the Federal Reserve tried to implement, and it would have raised bank capital for the GSIBs, the global systemically important banks, by about 20 or 25%. And at a top line level, that's impactful. That's, it was a significant increase that we did not think was well calibrated to the realities of the market. But if you look at the details, there are certain categories within the capital stack that were specifically going to target small business lending, that were specifically going to target investment in community development financial institutions, that would have adjusted upward the risk weight for investments in renewable energy. And so last Congress, there was a large push on a bipartisan basis. Both Republicans and Democrats came together on a selective basis to find issue and raise argument about the impact it would have on small business lending, the impact it would have on renewable investment, on CDFI investment. And the chorus was loud enough that the current regulators heard that. They saw the feedback from Congress, and as of about a few months ago, published a new set of bank capital requirements that, in our opinion, are much better calibrated for the realities of the market. I think there are still maybe an imperfection or two, but I think overall they represent a market improvement over the previous proposal. And so the impact, to communities would be, I think the current proposal would allow the banks, particularly B of A, to continue our commitment to CDFIs, We are the largest private investor in CDFIs. We've got over about 260 of them in our portfolio, serving all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And it would allow us to continue our position as the number one lender to small business in the economy. And overall, it's just it's a proposal that is much better calibrated to the status quo. And I think that, again, there might be an imperfection here or two, but it's one that much better reflects the current realities. And so we're hopeful to see it be enacted and finalized in some way that mirrors what's currently out there.
Not much to add. I think we do support seeing some refinements to the current proposal, and that's because we want to see capital continue to flow, and we certainly don't want to see it get caught up. But otherwise, that was excellent, Matt.
Yeah, my only add is make sure it gets down to the CDFIs. That's all. That's what I'm like. Make sure that capital gets reinvested, because I think it's great if there is more capital out there and it's not sitting because it has to be held hostage on a balance sheet, but really out there to be able to deploy, which I think that's what the big banks are saying. They will do it, and we should just make sure that happens.
All right, I want to make sure that we stay on time, and there were many things that you all mentioned in your opening statements that we didn't get a chance to discuss, but I hope many of these conversations continue throughout the conference and well beyond. But I want to close us out with discussing what steps policymakers, financial institutions, and the business community can take together to really create a more inclusive and competitive financial ecosystem for the future, and really for right now as well. And actually, why don't we start with Courtney? We'll just come back the other way. Put you on the
Thank
spot.
you. We launched our American Dream initiative about a month ago. This brings together what the firm has always considered to be our pillars of opportunity: careers and skills, local and vital institutions, financial health, affordable housing, and of course, small business. And this is a nationwide initiative that really is business first. What investments can the business make? What capital can we get out into communities? And in our small business portfolio particularly, we are making commitments to hire many more small business loan officers and also small business consultants, I would point to as a model that we think is really powerful. And these are people who are working for free with small businesses to help them grow and to thrive and hopefully to be our clients, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is really to make sure that they're able to grow their business in the way that they would like. And so that's a key component, we think, of fulfilling the American dream, and a way that we are in particular contributing.
I would say continue to enact policy that strengthens CDFIs. Let's start from the ground up. Let's continue to invest and support our CDFIs. Let's continue to support and strengthen the SBA, particularly the business loan programs, the 7A loan program. I'm going to get nerdy for a second, but it's governed by a rule called the no credit elsewhere test. So every borrower in the SBA program has to essentially assert that they cannot get credit elsewhere. And so focusing federal resources and federal support in that program would be hugely impactful. And then the last thing I would say is, as the digital asset bill continues to advance, is to make sure that equivalent behavior is regulated equivalently, if that makes any sense. Is making sure that if there are activities or investment that is made by non-banks, that it be regulated and overseen in a manner that preserves the strength and stability of the program, and of the banking system. So those are a few of the things that we would look out for.
And wrap it. I agree with that. I think modernization's happening. We all know it's happening. We read about it every day. But when that modernization happens without some boundaries, what does that mean? And that means boundaries about consumer protection, because these are small businesses in the consumer protection, but also not weakening the accountability that happened originally, right? These regulations were started to put community reinvestment, making sure that's still there, regardless if it's crypto, AI, or whatever the new thing is going to be. But how do we do that? And I would say for financial institutions, I say for everybody here, advocacy. That's the biggest thing that you can do as a small business owner, or what we're doing this kind of forums where you can advocate, but advocate intelligently, like, did you know about the CRA, and this is something that we think you should do, and going in there as opposed to, I need a small business loan, how do I get more of it? And really supporting, and I would be remiss because my entire team is probably watching, deposits. Where does your deposit go? And I would say where does your deposit go? Your deposit has a big effect on all of us because we can then go out and reloan that money. And my favorite line from It's a Wonderful Life is he's like, your money's in that guy's house and your money is in this person's house. And that is really true about the community banks as well as up to the big banks. So where you're making your financial decisions to put your deposits and where you're going, because that's where your money gets to speak. And then you can go and tell your legislature, this is where I want my money to go back into the community.
What a powerful way to end this panel. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to the panelists.
Esteemed guests, to introduce our keynote speaker, please welcome the Managing Director of Government Affairs for American Airlines and USHCC board member, Mr. Juan Hinojosa.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes. Encourage everybody to find their seats if they could. So my name is Juan Hinojosa. I'm the Managing Director and Head of Congressional Affairs at American Airlines. I'm also proud to be a USHCC board member. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to everybody in this room who traveled from someplace else to be here as a part of this conference. It's really critical that your voices are heard, that you're represented in Washington where big decisions are being made. Your advocacy moves the needle. I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I can tell you that your participation really is what matters most, so thank you. But today, it's my honor to introduce a distinguished leader whose career has been defined by diplomacy, public service, and a steadfast commitment to strengthening cooperation throughout the Western Hemisphere. As many of you know, the Organization of American States plays a pivotal role in advancing democracy, promoting economic opportunity, and fostering collaboration among the nations of the Americas. At a time when our region faces both significant challenges and extraordinary opportunities, strong and principled leadership is more important now than ever. Secretary General Albert Ramden brings decades of experience in international affairs and regional cooperation. Throughout his distinguished career, he has worked tirelessly to build consensus across governments, the private sector, and civil society. His leadership reflects a deep understanding that our collective prosperity depends on stronger partnerships, expanded trade, and policies that create opportunities for businesses and communities across the hemisphere. At American Airlines, we understand the importance of connectivity, connecting people, markets, and ideas. As the leading U.S. carrier in Latin America and the Caribbean, we see firsthand how collaboration across borders drives economic growth, supports entrepreneurs, and strengthens the ties that unite our nations. Secretary General Ramden's vision for the Americas aligns with these principles. His commitment to inclusive development, regional integration, and democratic institutions is helping shape a more prosperous and resilient future for all. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Albert Ramden.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, Chairman of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Ramiro Cavazos. Thank you very much. We look to stronger relations between the Organization of American States and the Hispanic Chamber, and I'll explain why shortly. To all others, thank you very much for being present, and I'd like to share with you some of our views. I thank Mr. Hinojosa for the introduction. As I said, it's an honor to be here before you. I'm not telling any secret when I tell you that we live in very complex times, globally. That is, I'm not speaking even about the hemisphere as yet, but globally. It's a rapidly changing, evolving world, both in terms of politics, economics, social, and in many other ways. We have two open wars currently in the world. Nobody expected wars to happen anymore since World War II, but it's still there. Now we still have that. These conflicts are not regional or bilateral in its impact. They affect the lives of the global community, including the business community, in many, many ways. So, in our view, we need in this day and age. We need from global leaders restraint. And I hope that peace will prevail and that the political leadership of the large countries of the world can find a way forward in a diplomatic and negotiated manner. I'm not going to go into the details of these global conflicts because you know and you follow the news as well, but it is important to start with that, to say that our region is also affected in all aspects by these conflicts. But I'm happy to say as well that the Americas, the Western Hemisphere, remains the safest region in terms of the absence of open conflicts for many decades. We don't have wars. We are a hemisphere of peace, and we should strive to keep it like that. This is also a message for the private sector to echo, that we do not want conflicts to escalate into wars, because wars cost, it diverts money, investment funds, and at the same time, it creates a lot of humanitarian misery, apart from the repair cost, and apart from the fact that we lose opportunity. So we must, everybody in society must propose a more peaceful arrangement. This is what we do at the Organization of American States. We serve as a platform for political dialogue to help prevent issues between countries from escalating, to ensure that there are negotiations and consultations channels among the political leadership. We must see that the benefit of moving forward in a peaceful manner is to the benefit of all. During my visits to countries in the region, and I have visited since I took office last year, many countries facing domestic challenges, and we had a couple of them. We prefer quiet diplomacy behind the scenes to assist countries. Even this morning with one country which is going through some difficult time at the moment. When we have these domestic challenges, which again will impact your capability to do business in the right way, then we must encourage restraint, we must encourage dialogue, and most importantly, extensive communication with the people who ultimately make decisions who and what they fight for. One example I can give you, and this is a very positive one. For instance, we have for a long time, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm sure some of you are, the Belize-Guatemala adjacency zone conflict, a territorial conflict for many decades. It's a case in point. I was in Belize recently, and following an incident, I was encouraged by the response of both the Guatemalan and the Belizean leadership. This is what I call responsible leadership. Rather than allowing the incident to escalate, both sides agreed to look beyond the immediate situation and toward the broader imperatives of peace, stability, and negotiated settlement. These are some of this is one example, but there are many more examples in Central America, in South America, in general, in the Caribbean. When we can foster collaboration between countries, it's to the benefit not only of society, the people, but also to the business community, because you need a politically stable climate. These are just some examples I give you just to indicate that the work the Organization of American States is doing as a multilateral body is useful to you. And this is why we have made engagement with the private sector in this new era a priority for the Organization of American States. I'll speak to that later. The approach we have developed at the OAS is that we must focus on mutual understanding. We live in the most fragmented phase in recent decades in the Americas. Some would say politically polarized, ideologically challenged in many ways. It is true. So it's not the greatest time for me to be Secretary General of an organization. But I'm happy to be there because I like problems. I like to solve problems. But it is a reality. It's a reality which we need to face, which you need to face as well. So I think your help will be enormously important. We want to make sure that peace is understood by leaders in the first place, legislators, private sector leaders, not as a privilege, but as a prerequisite, and where stability contributes to shared prosperity, and that we need a pragmatic approach rather than ideology defining our politics. A pragmatic approach. That is the way to go. So therefore, we have developed a vision for the Americas based on two agendas. One is a unity to foster peace in our societies. And the other one is an agenda towards prosperity. It goes to the heart of what the OAS stands for. Since 1948, the core objectives of the Organization of American States have not changed or have become less relevant. They are still as relevant as in 1948. Those are the four pillars: human rights, democracy, economic development, and security. Ultimately, all these four pillars lead back to the same fundamental aspiration of peace and prosperity for the people of the Americas. And we must do that with a strong commitment to regional solidarity and regional cooperation. Sometimes that commitment is weakened in terms of regional cooperation and solidarity. In my own experience, and I've been in this business for more than 25, almost 30 years, the people of the Americas do not want to be involved or engaged or are interested in what I call political complexities. They're not interested in that. Ultimately, what they want is a simple truth, and that is they want a peaceful environment where they can raise their families. They want a future for their children. They want a steady income and the ability to remain in the communities where they have built their lives. That's all they want. They don't care about that, all that discussion between leaders in terms of how to build a stronger society in the Americas. Although I must say the path to that shared aspiration looks different across our hemisphere. This is the reality. The Caribbean is navigating economic growth in the shadow of an environmental crisis. That's a reality. Central America is grappling with deep security and development issues. South America continues the difficult work of building and strengthening its democracies. And North America, the most economically integrated part of this hemisphere, has political challenges of its own. You only need to follow the news. This is not the best environment to talk about a better future, but it is necessary. Our hemisphere is not homogeneous. We understand that by now. We are diverse in many ways, historically, culturally, language, cuisine, food, soccer, whatever you want to name it. We're all different. In my view, that has been seen for a long time as a negative, as a problematic thing. It keeps us apart. I see it as a richness. I see it as a positive thing, as an opportunity to connect the people, because out of that, new things can be born. So at the OAS, we work across all of these realities, but we keep focusing on what unites us. And we are convinced that what brings us together, what can unite this hemisphere, is a shared commitment to peace and prosperity. So let me introduce the peace concept first. Peace is not just an absence of conflict. Peace is much more. It means that we must build a society that is a space that is free, fair, just, with equal treatment and opportunities for all. It means that we need strong democracies. We need strong electoral systems. We must make sure that the representative bodies, our congresses and legislations, our parties and agencies, state institutions function effectively. It means making sure that we have an education system that caters for all, without discrimination, and in any part of our countries. That we have a health system that provides for care for all. A healthy population is a wealthy population, we say. That's the case. And you make good use of that. So you have a responsibility in that regard as well. This is in short what I call the peace agenda. There's much more around it. The OAS works in all these areas, in all of the areas. But we need, and that's my focus very strongly, is also on the prosperity component. The Western Hemisphere has enormous potentials in terms of growth. We have rare minerals. In terms of mining, we have a market size which is sizable. Almost 1 billion people in the Americas. But our economic and financial footprint globally is limited. Apart from the 5 members of the G20, which are the richest countries in the world, apart from that, Latin America and the Caribbean do not contribute for more than 6% to the world economy. That is not a great achievement. We can do so much more. Then, in our view, how do we change this paradigm? Because again, I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity. And the opportunity lies in this, that we need consciously, in a pragmatic way, we need to trade more with each other. We need to explore our own market. The wealth has to stay in this region. Because of that, we'll be able to create more jobs, more manufacturing sites, and so on. We need to invest more in our opportunities in this hemisphere. And I can give you examples where there are opportunities and no South American, no Central American countries are involved in the investment. Others are outside the region. I'll give you some examples shortly. We need to make sure that we are connected as countries. We need to travel more to each other countries. We do not know each other well. Even in South America, we don't know each other. In the Caribbean as well, not. In Central America also not. These are the realities of the diversity which we have. But if we want to create one hemispheric economy, we will need to unite. We will need to connect. So American Airlines is here, but I don't want to single out one airline. But all airlines should work together to create that market for tourism. We have beautiful sites. How many of us coming from South America go to the Caribbean for a beach, but instead we go to Miami or Madrid, or the English-speaking Caribbean doesn't go to Cusco or Machu Picchu, they go to London. The Dutch, we're not going to Central America, we're going to Amsterdam. Because of our historical alliances, it's time to leave that behind. It requires a paradigm shift in your mind. It is equally beautiful to go to Brazil, to Fortaleza, to see the dunes. I did buggy riding there just recently. Okay. I could have done that in the Netherlands in the dunes as well, but Fortaleza. So we need to promote that, more tourism. That's the only way we will know each other. And the reason why I'm saying we need to be connected, both digitally and airline, road, and so on, because only when we create trust between people, you can start proper business. Only when we have knowledge about each other, we will create trust. So it is necessary. Just by knowing that we can invest in such and such country, it's not enough. You will not have that feeling that I have people I can trust. This is a given. You know that yourself. You want to know who you're dealing with. But that can only happen when you come and connect, learn the language, feel the vibe in the country, culturally, and so on and so on. So there is so much more that can be done in just the precondition for doing business and to work on the prosperity agenda. Now, I think in this context, to generate prosperity, we have 4 elements. As I mentioned already, strengthen connectivity in all aspects, greater flow of information, and an increased trade and investment environment. In terms of increased connectivity, student exchanges, people to people, not happening. Universities not working together in our Latin America and the Caribbean. The University of West Indies is not connected to UNAM in Mexico or somewhere else in Brazil. In the top 200 universities in the world, there is none from Latin America and the Caribbean, while we have great institutions. How much knowledge do we create ourselves in this hemisphere? We borrow technology. We buy technology developed elsewhere. We do have the capability of developing that technology, that software, tailor-made to this region for ourselves. Not happening. Slowly it's happening, slowly. But we need really to go into the next gear. I think there was a timer, but they turned it off. Or is my 15 minutes over? Yeah, I normally carry a blanket and I put over it and then I don't see it. But I have to be disciplined as well. So information flow is another one that's important. And I think it's important to say that, for instance, the Caribbean imports $6 billion, maybe more now, in only foodstuffs because of the tourism industry, not because they have a large market. It all comes from North America or Europe. Why not from South America and the Central American region? I mean, there will be, I'm not speaking about the small bits of trade that is going on. I'm speaking about large quantities. There is a market right here. Global crises have shown us that supply chains needs to be short. It's more secure, cheaper. When COVID was reigning in the world for 2-3 years, the prices of containers went up 400%, from 4,000 to 18,000, just to come from China. If we had a supply chain in this region, it would have been so much cheaper and more secure. So we have to learn from that past. Our dependency on pharmaceuticals is enormous. We see what happened during the COVID-19 crisis. So I can go on and talk about these things in terms of the practicality of the restraints which we have. Now, trade, as I said, an investment. There is a potential market of almost $1 billion. We can do better in terms of internal trade. It will require us to work together. And I'm not speaking about global policies or regional policies like free trade areas or the Americas and so on. That ambition is gone. I don't think the time is there anymore. But at least let's make sure that the banking sector works together. The central banks work together. They align their policies, that the investment companies are established, that we create customs regions, that the port authorities work together. All these things are not happening in the same way as it should be. The barriers to doing trade and investment needs to be looked at. The monetary cooperation between Latin America and the Caribbean needs to be looked at as well. So we have a lot of work to do. We think what we're doing in terms of business is just a small sliver of what is possible. I'm convinced of that, simply because there is at least 25% growth potential in our hemisphere on the short term. If we can achieve that in the coming 10, 15, 20 years, it would be great. So, investment. There are 2 countries which can provide energy security to this hemisphere. Suriname and Guyana are the newcomers in the industry. How many of you know how much oil there is? Possibly the second largest basin of oil in the world. How many countries are investing in Suriname and Guyana from our hemisphere? Except for ExxonMobil from the US in Guyana, in terms of the large footprints. Total Energies from France in Suriname, Petronas from Malaysia in Suriname, no South American countries, no South American company. The subcontracting, tens of billions of dollars, Saipem in Italy, Chinese companies and others, US-based companies as well. There is so much more that can be done simply in working on a long-term strategic alliance on food security and energy security in our hemisphere. Those 2 alone will secure a market and wealth for a long time. So I'm just sharing these messages simply to say, we stand with you. We want to work together. We like to see opportunities. I see a particular role for the private sector in the coming decades in our hemisphere, not simply because of the bottom line figure of profit making, but also based on the priorities and the responsibility you carry as a participant in our society. You equally have the responsibility as any other to protect security, to defend human rights, and to promote democracy, because ultimately it's in your interest. to have a stable, political, secure environment to invest in. Again, I invite you to work with us. There are many other things which we can discuss, but we can do that subsequently. I think the reason I wanted and accepted the invitation to come is simply to say that it should be seen, my presence here and your invitation, as a start to build that relationship. We have an important meeting in Panama during the General Assembly, which is going to be held on the 23rd and 24th. But on the 21st, we have a specific, for the first time again, a private sector dialogue. I would like to invite the Chamber to be there, because you will see many others who will be present there. The idea is to lay the foundation for this kind of work so that we can work together. Ultimately, it's not your job to do that, but ultimately it is something which we all need to do together. I thank you very much and wish you all the best.